The ultimate battle between crust and must.
And before you Jujutsu Kaisen fans try and go in the comment section, try to argue with me, trying to say Mahito's not musty,
this man lives in a fucking sewer. So that is pretty damn musty if you ask me. The most hardcore game of professional tag.
Little did I know I was going to clutch.
Why are you running?
Fucking right.
Don't fucking run away from me!
No cap, Shigaraki was dusting Mahito right there. Well, you know, when you take into consideration that strength and speed are on par with all of like, that's not really surprising. Sorry, Jujutsu fans. You know what? I'm sorry, I'm gonna save the cooking for later.
But you know, if you guys have seen the previous versus video, you guys know how this is gonna go. I'm gonna pick a side of Shigaraki, and Rashawn's gonna pick the side of Mahito, and then we're gonna explain the powers, and then afterwards, we're going to come to a unbiased conclusion as to who would win. Don't forget to like and subscribe, all that jazz, and please let us know in the comments what would be the next versus battle that you guys would like to see. Feel free to throw in some video game characters, because, you know, we're a gaming and manga channel as well. And I got a lot of video game knowledge that I want to put to use.
With that being said, Mahito is going to wipe his ass with Shigaraki.
This is a fight between the creator and the destroyer, the artist and the chappy-lipped villain.
Good God, give that man some water! But do you know what is a good substitute for water?
Death.
And by the power invested in Mahito for being a cursed spirit, he's going to kill Shigaraki easily. Because little does anyone know how amazing Mahito is at fighting and taking advantage of any particular situation. But anyway, let's get this show on the road and talk about how Mahito is gonna turn this motherfucker Shigaraki into a pile of Play-Doh. First things first, Mahito's resourcefulness is on a completely different level compared to most anime characters. Literally, Mahito can adapt to any situation he is put through. Because Mahito is such a quick thinker and a genius, this has allowed him to even take on an Eva. And when doing so, Mahito took full advantage of his surroundings. When in an area surrounded by water, Mahito can just simply turn into a fish and use the water to his advantage because this gives him enough time to plan a new strategy and face his opponent. And if there isn't any water, Mahito could just grow wings and fly in the sky like a bird, which not only gives him more movement options, but this also allows Mahito to separate himself from his opponent and even dodge certain attacks. Because, you know, if someone can fly and their opponent can't fly, what are they gonna do?
I'm looking at you, Batman. I'm sorry to tell you this, but you're not going to be throwing kryptonite 50 feet in the air. But I digress.
It's gonna take a lot for Shigaraki to just rip Mahito out the skies. And I just completely need you all to understand how great Mahito is at adapting in a given situation. When fighting both Nanami and Yuji, he was able to make a sword hand and another eye to watch both of their movements, which under normal circumstances wouldn't be possible. Which just goes to show how great of an ability Mahito really has. But there's a catch, because not just any average Joe could be nice with this type of power. Because in order to use this ability to its full advantage, you would have to be a quick thinker, and that's exactly what Mahito is. When Yuji is trying to fight Mahito, Mahito then thinks of what he wants to do, and when thinking of that very thing, he then begins to act on it. Mahito proceeds to turn his body into whatever he needs in a given moment. A proper example of this would be when Yuji is outside of the school and Mahito wants to attack him. What he does is he aims his arm and uses it as a projectile. Obviously, if someone's far away, you're going to think to attack them from a distance. Some individuals might have just jumped down to continue to fight Yuji head on. But here's the catch, because Mahito was able to use full advantage of his abilities. There is a simple problem, and so he provided a simple solution to that same problem. Yuji was far away, and so Mahito attacked Yuji from a distance because his power would allow him to. He didn't have to jump down and continue to fight Yuji head on. And this is what I want you to understand. And after attacking from a distance, Yuji grabs Mahito's projectile. And in response to this, Mahito quickly adapts and then attacks Yuji for grabbing his arm. It just so happens that Mahito did not take advantage or control of this situation in particular because Yuji did not let go of his arm the way he predicted. Mahito is normally steps ahead of his enemy, and his ability allows him to always be at an advantage. He always has control of a fight. And this is all thanks to how great Mahito's power is, because when it comes to Mahito, his options are quite literally limitless. If Mahito can think it, he can do it. And it's really that simple. Creating a sword hand, creating an extra eye so he can see. He can create clones. He can have an army of minions. He can turn parts of his body into spikes. He can turn other living beings into weapons. And change his size to dodge certain attacks. And not even that, he can make his arms stretch so he can reach his opponent. And not only that, he can make his body parts bigger. Think about that. Which literally makes it possible for him to crush an army of opponents easily. Mahito can do so much that we haven't even gotten to the good stuff. He can create walls to stop his opponents. He can survive getting his head kicked off, and he can use his clone to an advantage in a situation like this by using that same clone that he created and having it create even more minions while his clone distracts his opponents until he makes a gang of fucking monsters to jump you.
Let him get up, let him get up, let him get up. Fight back, nigga! Fight back, nigga! Fight back!
And you're not gonna get up, because you can just easily be overwhelmed by soul multiplicity, because Mahito can easily merge 2 or more souls, and then he can counter this out by using body repel, which turns whatever living beings he has as ammunition into a ranged attack. And after doing that, Mahito can use this same attack as a way to sneak up on opponents or even a shield. He can even shoot transfigured humans as projectiles and then plant them into walls and use them as traps. Not to mention, the only way to damage Mahito is by damaging his soul. And if you do that, if you cut off a part of his body, he can literally have it come crawling back to him and manipulate that limb back into his body as if you never hurt him in the first place. Not to mention, if Mahito is really just having a good day, he could always just hit you with a black flash technique. And to get you to understand the importance of this technique, let's say Mahito can do 100 damage for a hit. Now, if Mahito were to use that black flash technique over his attack that was originally 100 damage, it would actually become 100,000 damage from one attack from using the black flash technique, which is really just a game changer in a fight. And not only that, he can have an awakening and find his true self and become a being with more durability and even blade arms. Stabby stab dab. And then there's my favorite part of it all. The I wanna fucking win button. Mahito's domain expansion, which is literally described as being in Mahito's hands. When you're in a domain, all attacks are fatal and cannot be evaded. Normally, when he's not using his domain, Mahito would have to touch you in order to kill you, but when you're in his domain, he does not even have to touch you. You're literally just Play-Doh at that point, and he's just going to mold you and sculpt you into whatever ugly freak he wants you to be, or he's just going to kill you. At that point, you've practically already lost, and even then, he can keep his domain up for 0.2 seconds.
Which is faster than how Goku could travel around a continent.
And even then, for having his domain up for such a short time, it can do fatal damage, because as we can see, when he uses his domain expansion on Todo, he was able to allow his power to climb up to Todo's body and kill him from the inside. If you ask me, Shigaraki doesn't stand a chance. Especially since he has to damage Mahito's soul to hurt him.
Now it's time for my boy Shigaraki's moveset. And to make it simple, this man touches things and they disintegrate. They decay. There you go. Yep. That's all Shigaraki's got. Yep. But if you're caught up in the manga, you'd know that Shigaraki has actually experienced a quirk awakening, but not only this, he has all of All For One's quirks. And it doesn't even stop right there. Shigaraki's body has been modified to be on par with, but not as strong as, All Might's in terms of speed, strength, and durability. So he'll basically have All Might's speed, strength, and toughness, even if his quirks were to be cut off. But before we get into the specifics such as his strength and speed, let's see what exactly Shigaraki has at his disposal in terms of his arsenal. Now when it comes to his new awakened Decay quirk, what makes this new version of Decay so broken is the fact that it can spread at a disgusting rate. What this means is the things that Shigaraki does not touch will also decay if the object that he is decaying makes contact with it. As you can see from this panel, Shigaraki touches one person, and his decay spreads not only to the people that he is not touching, but from simply touching these people and using his quirk, you can see that the brick wall is also decaying along with the road as well, simply because these people were making contact with those things. Just how broken is this, you may be asking? So let's just say Shigaraki is breaking down dirt, right? Now let's say if he's breaking down dirt and you make contact with that dirt. And let's not just leave it at dirt, anything for that matter. If there's a stray piece of rubble that flies off of anything that he's decaying, that would be enough to kill you. Shigaraki's decay obliterates anything he touches and then some. Even getting hit with a piece of stray rubble will kill you. I couldn't say it any better than the manga itself. And this allows Shigaraki to destroy cities in seconds. And something that is very overlooked when it comes to his decay quirk is its resourcefulness. With decay, Shigaraki makes his offense the best form of defense, because whatever comes at him, he will delete. As seen with Ridestro's special attack Burden, he takes his stress and materializes it into physical form, making it an attack that cannot be evaded. Shigaraki could not evade this attack, because Burden cannot be evaded. So what he did was, in an instant, he touched the attack that was coming into him and ignored all instincts to defend and deleted it. Even with Ridestro's direct attack with his stress output, mind you, the shockwave from this same attack was able to destroy buildings. Shigaraki was able to delete this before it connected, resulting in him not taking any damage and using his quirk offensively. So if you were to rush Shigaraki or used a physical ranged attack, he would easily counter and either erase you for trying to punch him or attack him, or just simply delete your ranged attacks. And this isn't even where it ends. Shigaraki can use his decay quirk to turn a fight into a game of the floor is lava. If you make contact with the ground while fighting Shigaraki, you will die. And this is exactly why Destro had to chop off his own legs and make sure he was not in an area that Shigaraki touched. But even then, Shigaraki's decay could just keep on spreading, making the radius even bigger. So I'd really like to see Mahito just try to get out of that one. But not only this, Shigaraki also has All for One's quirks. Now, we haven't seen every single bit of All for One's quirks, so I'm only going to include the ones that are actually seen in the manga for this fight. Now, one of the quirks that All for One uses is warping, and he won't be able to use this because of the conditions it would require to use this quirk during his fight with Mahito. Shigaraki isn't well acquainted with Mahito, so he will not be able to use warp on him. And the next quirk that we have is Search. And with this quirk, not only will it reveal Mahito's location at all times, but it will also show Shigaraki's Mahito's weaknesses. And the next quirks are Air Cannon and Spring Limbs. Obviously, when used in unison, Air Cannon, shoots a blast of air like a cannon. And Spring Limbs, essentially, All for One is using his muscles like a spring, similar to Gear 4 Luffy, cocking his arm back and then punching. But when these two quirks are put together, despite Shigaraki having to get in close to destroy his opponent, the destructive blast from this attack can level multiple buildings. But that's just the offensive capabilities of this ability, because he can also use this defensively, making a giant blast of air around him. And also take into account that he has strength enhancing quirks and quirks that also boost his kinetic energy. But not only does he have air cannon and spring-like arms for long-ranged abilities, he also has rivet stab. This is a quirk where Shigaraki will make these black finger-like blades and stab through his opponents. But not only this, he can also use this for mobility options as well. And just in case, I'm pretty sure I haven't mentioned this already yet, he can also use air cannon for mobility options too. But what makes this rivet stab so dangerous is the fact that they cost little to no energy when Shigaraki uses them. But not only this, they can all track onto their target automatically, making Shigaraki's defense insane. And please keep in mind, for a mobility option, Shigaraki can actually fly with airwalk. And his defensive options don't stop there, because he can actually use a quirk called Impact Recoil. If you were to hit Shigaraki, he can send the attack right back at you. And another thing that makes this ability really broken is the fact that he can use Impact Recoil on objects and other people. We don't know the exact conditions of this ability, but when All Might tried to attack All for One warped Gran Torino in front of him and used Impact Recoil, and it sent the attack right back at All Might. And as for the last few quirks, I'm only going to name the ones that would make sense in this fight. For example, I don't see the point in mentioning Shigaraki's radio wave quirk. And I don't want to get into detail about whether or not radio waves can damage ghosts and spirituality and all that other crazy stuff, because that would make this video an hour long. So we're just going to name the quirks that are going to be used in this fight. Basically, the only quirks that are going to matter. So despite not seeing All for One use these quirks singularly, that does not mean that Shigaraki cannot use these abilities without combining them like All for One. So when it comes to all the quirks that All for One uses when he makes his giant, disgusting monster arm, that doesn't mean Shigaraki cannot just use them without the combination. So Shigaraki has multiplier for a quirk, and he can multiply the amount of limbs that he actually has, as seen with All for One multiplying the amount of hands he has when he uses his ultimate attack. And alongside that, he has hypertrophy, which allows him to make any part of his body enhanced in size, similar to Gear 3rd Luffy. And he can also use spear-like bones, similar to Kimimaro from Naruto, or that one Nomu with the bones poking out. And last but not least for Shigaraki in terms of quirks and tools he'll be able to use in this fight, super regeneration. And also, please keep in mind, despite his regeneration, wearing down and being trash, he was still able to generate. And when it comes to Shigaraki's moveset, that's all we have right now. I'm pretty sure All For One has a shit ton of quirks, but we're not going to do that with this fight. We're only going to use the ones that we have actually seen in the manga, because I'm not about to sit here and play a guessing game of what quirks does All For One have. And before we get this fight underway, we have to lay out some rules. Now, because Mahito's a ghost, he has an advantage in this fight, so much so that I don't even think a character in My Hero can fight or let alone punch a ghost. So in order for this fight to actually be a real fight, we're going to have to take that ghost card away from Mahito, or these ones will never be ran. Because it would really just boil down to,
Can't hit a ghost. Can't hit a ghost, Shigaraki.
and then Mahito would get the automatic dub. So now that I've laid out the rules, let's get this fight underway. When it comes to this fight, all Mahito really needs to do is just figure out a plan to put his hands onto Shigaraki so he can mutate him and ultimately kill him. And the same exact thing applies for Shigaraki, whether it be him parrying Mahito or Mahito parrying him when it comes to who's gonna touch who first. So this fight will actually play out very differently. Now, the most simple thing to do for Mahito in this situation would be to overwhelm Shigaraki with an army of transfigured humans. But unfortunately, the transfigured humans would not stand a chance against Shigaraki because he could easily touch the ground and make them all turn into dust. And he could also use this same ground that he infected with his decay quirk and also attack Mahito because of its ever-growing radius. And to easily counter this, Mahito would just grow the wings of a bird and fly into the air, and from then, he can attack Shigaraki from a distance. At this moment in the fight, Shigaraki would obviously use his search quirk and find Mahito's weaknesses, but while he's doing that, Shigaraki's rivet stabs would automatically apply pressure onto Mahito while he's in the air, not giving him time to think of a way to counter him in the situation. But not only this, if Mahito were to try and attack Shigaraki from a long range, he could always counter by touching one of the body parts Mahito would have used to manipulate his body for a long range attack, or he could just use his air cannon. And by the looks of it, that damage is going to completely destroy Mahito. Now, if Mahito were to try and attack Shigaraki from a distance, he'd be putting himself at risk because one simple touch from Shigaraki would just kill him. And so, knowing this, he would use his domain expansion for 0.2 seconds because this would be the most quick and efficient way of taking out Shigaraki. And in order to do any real damage with this, Mahito would have to close the distance between him and Shigaraki so he can trap Shigaraki into his domain. Mahito would have to get in close so that Shigaraki would be in the range of his domain. But Shigaraki would simply not allow Mahito to get in close with his domain because of his search quirk. He would already know what Mahito's weaknesses are, and he would keep Mahito at a distance with his rivet stabs, his air cannon. But not only this, his disgusting speed that is on par with All Might. When it comes to speed and strength, Shigaraki and Mahito are not in the same league, and Mahito would simply never be able to catch him. But Shigaraki would simply be able to kill Mahito with his air cannon and spring-like limbs to absolutely decimate him. Well, with all that being said, Shigaraki wouldn't even be able to damage Mahito because he would not be able to damage Mahito's soul. But unfortunately, Shigaraki would know this with his quirk search and find out this weakness and then perceive his soul. It would be no different than how Yuji would be able to perceive his soul, because he'd obviously know that perceiving Mahito's soul would be his weakness. So the moment Shigaraki used search, he'd be able to damage Mahito in this fight. And honestly, I feel like at this point in the fight, Mahito has exhausted all of his options because Shigaraki is in a different league in terms of strength, speed, and even attack power with his air cannon and spring-like limbs, and power enhancement and kinetic energy enhancement, all that stuff. And by the looks of it, I hate to say it, but it looks like Mahito just lost this fight. Mahito literally has no other options in this fight because Shigaraki would snuff them out. And because of the gap between speed and strength and overall options in the fight, Shigaraki would win. So Sean, any thoughts or objections on this dub?
Well, that Shigaraki just shits on him. I'm not even gonna cap.
He really
just
does.
overwhelms him.
It's really just because of the speed and strength that he has in his mobility options.
In his
Because
arsenal.
He can just, like, if Mahito would get this dub if he literally just caught him in a domain expansion. It would literally be over for Shigaraki. But the thing is, that's if Shigaraki gets caught in his domain expansion, because with his super speed that completely outclasses him, it's GG's. He's not going to catch
He'll
him.
never, ever end up in the range of Mahito's expansion.
Exactly. If you look at the size of this domain expansion that Mahito has, that's more than enough space for fucking Shigaraki to stay clear of. That is more than enough space.
He can avoid that easily.
Yes, keeping Mahito away out of distance. And you would think that Mahito could catch him off guard, but the Surge Quirk really carries Shigaraki in this fight.
Because he knows what to expect.
Yes, he knows exactly what to expect. He's going to keep him away out of distance. Not only this, he's going to touch the ground. Mahito has limited options because he cannot touch the ground. If Shigaraki touches Mahito's body, because Mahito attacks with his body, he's just going to fucking disintegrate because his fucking shit is going to, his fucking decay is going to spread to Mahito and absolutely destroy him. There's literally nothing he can do in this fight. And it's crazy because Shigaraki didn't even have to use all of his quirks available. All the ones that are known in the manga, he didn't even use all of them.
Out of everything that Mahito could possibly do, I really do not think that there's anything that he could think of to even counteract any of these things against Shigaraki.
There isn't, because this dude literally attacks with his body. And not only that, he does not generate enough force, enough damage to actually kill Shigaraki. Could he use Black Flash? Then he could only do that if he could get close enough to actually hit him with that, and that's not going to work either. Shigaraki's durability and strength far surpasses that of a majority of the cast in Jujutsu Kaisen, excluding Gojo. And when you take that into consideration, it's a no-brainer as to why Shigaraki won this fight. Now, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Comment any other characters you'd like to see in a versus video. And with that, we are out.